Namaste, everybody. Welcome. We are going to be today exploring the scene where Juliet has a soliloquy while she's waiting for the nurse to come back with news from Romeo. Now, just to clarify, a soliloquy is where a character is on their own expressing their inner thoughts to the audience, okay? The difference between a soliloquy and a monologue is that a monologue would be one person talking, but there could be somebody else on stage, or they're speaking to someone, whereas the soliloquy is the idea that it's their inner thoughts being shared with the audience. So we're going to be looking at today how Shakespeare presents the character of Juliet at the start of the scene, and what we need to know is she's eagerly awaiting this news from the nurse about whether Romeo's agreed to marry her and when they're going to marry, etc. So Juliet is very desperate to find out this news, which we see the text. Now, if you look at the first bit of this, okay, so Juliet, her first lines of this scene are, "The clock struck 9 when I did send the nurse. In half an hour she promised to return. Perchance she cannot meet him. That's not so." So as we can see, she's quite desperate. She sent the nurse off at 9 o'clock, and the nurse promised to return in half an hour, but the nurse hasn't returned yet, and Juliet is getting anxious about this and wants to know where she is. We can tell she's impatient in this scene and frustrated through her use of short sentences. If you look, all of these, there's 4 sentences within those 3 lines there, okay? And in particular, this last line here, "Perchance she cannot meet him. That's not so." She's almost arguing with herself, saying one thing and then contradicting it in the next statement, which shows she's desperately trying to wonder why the nurse isn't there, and shows her sort of desperate level of thinking. So if we look at this next bit, she then goes on to say, "Oh, she is lame. Love's herald should be fought, which 10 times faster glide than the sun's beams, driving back shadows over lowering hills." Okay, so we start with this, "Oh, she is lame." Okay, so first of all, when she's calling her lame, she's saying the nurse is being really slow. Okay, so she's sort of insulting her there, saying she's a really slow person. But the most interesting thing is if we look at the bits in pink here, what we've got is this word "oh." And "oh" is what we call an exclamation in Shakespeare's language, and he does it often to show characters when they're distressed or shouting or calling out to the heavens or gods, okay? So in this instance, it's showing her frustration. You quite often see this with O's and R's, and the idea is it's to highlight and express the sentence a little bit more, okay? So, "oh, she is lame." So that "oh" is demonstrating she's frustrated, she's crying out, okay? And this is supported with the use of the exclamation mark at the end, okay? The two go hand in hand, showing that it is an exclamation that she is saying, okay? Then what Juliet goes on to say is that a message of love should be quick, it should be fast, it should get to the lover instantly rather than taking ages like the nurses. And what she does is she compares it to nature at this point and compares it to the sun's beams, and the idea that light is one of the obviously fastest travelling things, isn't it? Okay, don't know the science technology behind that. You can ask science teachers for that one. But the idea is light is quite a quick thing, and sun's beams appear instantly, and she's comparing it to that, saying that it should be quick as the sun's beams in the same way that they instantly drive back shadows from hills. And I've put this lovely little picture here for you to get the idea. So this light casts away the shadows really quickly in the same way that the nurse should be delivering that message, okay? Herald is a messenger, heralds, okay? So she then goes on to say, "Therefore nimble pinioned doves draw, therefore the wind shift Cupid wings even, not winds." Now this is a reference to 2 gods, okay? She's comparing love to Venus and to Cupid. Now both of these gods, okay, so we could argue that it's religious imagery here, have something to do with wings, okay? And in this instance, Venus has a chariot that is pulled by doves, and Cupid has wings, okay? And the reason why she's saying this is she's saying they have wings for a reason. They deliver messages of love because they have wings to get them there quickly. They are wind swift. Therefore, love always should have wings because it should be quick, okay? So it's a comparison between these two and the speed in which they might be able to deliver a message because they can fly. Then she goes on to say, "Now is the sun upon the highmost hill, this day's journey. And from to 12 is 3 long hours, yet she is not come. So, sun's rise, it's now, she set the nurse off at 9 o'clock, it's now 12 o'clock, so Juliet has been waiting 3 long hours. Note the word long, saying it's taken ages, okay? Day seems long. All of this is adding to how desperate Juliet is. She's anxious, she's impatient, and what Shakespeare's doing for us is he's building tension in this scene. We know Juliet is desperate for this message, so obviously when the nurse then does arrive, we'll be interested to see how Juliet reacts, but it's also sort of setting us up like this idea that Juliet is quite an impatient character, and we see that at multiple points throughout the play. Then, okay, she says, had she affections and warm youthful blood, she would be as swift in motion as a bull. My words would bandy her to my sweet love, and his to me. So let's look at that bit first of all. She's again insulting the nurse here, because she was basically saying if the nurse was as young and passionate and as warm and youthful as she is, okay, then she'd be a lot quicker with her actions. In the same way that if you've got a ball and you throw it to someone, it bounces between two people, that's a really quick action. So the idea here is Juliet said if she was doing it herself and if the nurse was youthful and young, the words would bounce between her and her sweet love. So Romeo and her would have a sort of volley of conversation a lot quicker, but the nurse is very, very slow. What we've also got here is the mention of blood. Blood's quite an important sort of imagery that runs throughout Romeo and Juliet. The idea obviously of death, but the idea of being linked to your two families by blood. So the Capulets and Montague are linked by blood, but also blood plays quite heavily in the idea that your sort of blood pressure rises when you see someone you love, and it's got that indication there. And the final two lines of this one says, bold folks, many feign as they were dead, unwielding, slow, heavy, and pale as lead. Okay, lovely rhyming couplet there by Juliet. But she again is insulting the nurse, calling her old and old folk, and she's calling her things like slow, heavy, pale as lead. So she's using this range of adjectives to insult the nurse and basically old people because they're slow, and it's that irritants that they're slow that's winding Juliet up and adding to her impatient nature. She's also saying here, though, that many old people act as if they're already dead. Okay, so this idea that they're already dead, so they don't care about love, whereas young people really do. And again, it's imagery of death that is running throughout the play. Finally, the nurse does arrive. Nurse and Peter enter. Peter is a servant. And Juliet says, "Oh God, she comes. Oh honey nurse, what news? Hast thou met with him? Send my man away." And again, we've got this repeated "oh" again in the yellow, so I've done that in yellow for you. Again, it's that exclamation, heightening that sentence, showing her, almost panic, almost desperation at that point, okay? She's calling out to God, "Oh God, she comes." The hyphen in between these two sentences shows how quickly and impatiently she's talking, so her ideas are jumping from one idea to the other. Again, shows that desperation. We've got as well the fact that she's bombarding the nurse with questions. Okay, we can see multiple questions in this bit, 2 questions in fact, because she's desperate for answers and she's not giving the nurse a chance to respond to them. It's very quick fire, again, showing that impatience. The interesting bit, though, is that she says, "Oh, honey nurse." Juliet is very aware that she needs to sweet talk the nurse in order to get what she wants from her. So she's trying to flatter her. So honey, basically, she's calling her sweet. So a sweet nurse, okay? Which is a complete contrast to what we just looked at when she was calling her heavy and old and slow, okay? So Juliet is trying to sweet talk the nurse at that point. Right, so your turn now. So, 10-minute task for you. I'd like you to answer one of these questions and send over your answers, please. So the core question is, what is Juliet impatient about? How do we know she's impatient? Okay, so what gives the indication of that? The challenge question, how does Juliet insult the nurse in this extract, and why do we think she's insulting her? And the super challenge, what imagery does Juliet use when describing how slow the nurse is? What does this teach us about Juliet as a character, and why do you think it is important to establish Juliet as quite an impatient character from this stage in the play? So you might need to think about what happens later on. Make sure you write in full for those answers. You could send that over to your teacher. That would be absolutely brilliant. And good luck. Don't forget to email any questions if you are unsure. Thank you all very much for listening. Mr. Brown is out.